The navigation display showed a crimson warning that made every other species in the galaxy turn away in disgust. The Maelstrom Nebula stretched across 30 light-years of twisted space-time, where gravity wells collapsed into themselves, and reality bent like heated metal. No sane civilization had ever attempted passage through its chaotic heart. Commander Riven Kesta studied the swirling mass of cosmic destruction with the kind of expression that had made her infamous across 7 star systems. Her weathered hands traced the projected route on the holotable, while her bridge crew, a motley collection of humans who'd volunteered for what the Galactic Council had officially designated as ritualistic suicide, waited for her decision. "Captain," said Navigator Jorik Vyas, his cybernetic eye whirring as it calculated probabilities, "the hegemony fleet will reach the outer colonies in 43 hours. The standard hyperspace lanes will take us 67 hours, even pushing the engines beyond recommended limits." The hegemony. Those crystalline bastards had been systematically conquering human settlements for the past decade, their advanced technology making resistance seem futile. Every other species had either joined them or fled to the galaxy's rim. Only humanity remained defiant, and now they were running out of time and space. The Nexari attempted passage through the Maelstrom 3 centuries ago, added Chief Science. Officer Lyra Hendricks, her voice carefully neutral. 17 ships entered, 0 emerged. Riven nodded slowly. The Nexari had been master navigators, their crystalline minds capable of processing gravitational calculations that would drive human mathematicians insane. If they couldn't survive the Maelstrom, conventional wisdom suggested that humans, with their primitive brains and tendency toward emotional decision-making, would be obliterated within minutes. But conventional wisdom had never accounted for human stubbornness. "Patch me through to the fleet," Riven commanded. The view screen flickered, revealing the faces of 47 other ship commanders. Men and women who'd already lost everything to the hegemony's advance, whose colonies lay in smoking ruins behind them. They looked tired, desperate, but their eyes held something that the galaxy's elder species had long since abandoned. Defiant hope. "I won't lie to you," Riven began, her voice carrying across the quantum comm channels to every ship in there. "Ragtag fleet. The Maelstrom will likely kill us all. The physics are against us. The odds are impossible. Every rational calculation says we should surrender or flee to the outer dark." She paused, letting the weight of those words settle. "But surrender means watching our children become slaves to crystalline overlords who see us as barely evolved animals. And fleeing means abandoning 40 million colonists to that same fate." Her jaw tightened. "I'd rather die trying than live knowing we quit when it mattered most." One by one, green acknowledgement lights appeared on her tactical display. 47 ships, carrying the last free humans in this sector of the galaxy, agreeing to attempt the impossible. "All ships, prepare for Maelstrom entry," Riven announced. Navigation lay in a course for the heart of hell itself. As the fleet adjusted its heading toward the swirling cosmic nightmare ahead, Junior Communications Officer Tycho Brennan whispered what they were all thinking. "The galaxy's going to remember this day, one way or another." The Maelstrom waited. Patient and deadly, its gravitational anomalies already beginning to tug at their hull plating. The first hour inside the Maelstrom nearly broke them. Space itself had become a living thing, writhing and convulsing as competing gravity wells tore at the fabric of reality. The USS Defiant's hull groaned under stresses that should have pulverized it, while emergency klaxons wailed their mechanical protests. On the bridge, every display showed red warnings that would have sent any sane crew fleeing back to normal. "Space. Hull integrity at 68% and falling," reported Chief Engineer Cass Mortimer, her voice steady despite the chaos. "We're losing atmosphere on decks 7 through 9. Riven gripped her command chair as another gravitational wave slammed into them, sending several crew members sprawling. Through the view screen, she could see the twisted wreckage of ancient ships, remnants of civilizations that had attempted this passage over the millennia. Metal bones stretched across impossible distances, frozen in gravitational amber. "Structural collapse on the horizon," came the desperate transmission from Captain Vox Meridian. "We're breaking apart." On the tactical display, Riven watched as the colony ship's icon flickered and died. 15,000 souls gone in an instant. The Maelstrom had claimed its first victim. "All ships implement Protocol 7, she commanded, her voice cutting through the static. "Protocol 7, an insane maneuver that involved using their own ships' gravitational signatures to surf the chaotic waves instead of fighting them." "Captain, that's never been tested," Navigator Vias protested, his cybernetic implants sparking as they struggled to process the sensor data. "Then we'll test it now," Riven snapped. "Helm, reduce thrust to minimum. Engineering, reroute all power to the gravitational deflectors. We're going to ride this storm instead of fighting it." What happened next would be studied by xenobiologists for generations. Where other species had tried to impose order on chaos, humanity embraced it. They stopped calculating optimal paths and started feeling their way through the storm, using intuition and desperation in equal measure. Captain Naya Volkov of the heavy cruiser Retribution was the first to master the technique, her ship dancing between gravity wells like a leaf on hurricane winds. "It's like sailing," she transmitted, her voice filled with wonder. "You don't fight the wind, you use it." One by one, the human ships began to flow with the Maelstrom's currents. They lost 3 more vessels, the frigate Courage, the transport New Dawn, and the science ship Kepler. But the remaining 44 ships pressed deeper into the cosmic storm. Hours passed. Space twisted around them in patterns that hurt to perceive directly. Several crew members suffered psychological breaks as their minds struggled to process the impossible geometries surrounding them. But humanity's greatest strength had always been its ability to adapt to hostile environments. "Captain," Science Officer Hendricks called out, her voice tight with excitement, "I'm detecting something ahead, a stable corridor, like the eye of a hurricane." Through the swirling chaos, they glimpsed it. A ribbon of relatively calm space threading through the Maelstrom's heart. It was narrow, barely wide enough for their ships, and it writhed like a living thing as gravitational forces played across its boundaries. "All ships form single file," Riven ordered. "We're going through." The passage was harrowing. Ships scraped against invisible walls of compressed space-time, their hulls screaming in protest. The transport Liberty Bell lost her port engine, while the destroyer Fierce had to vent her cargo bay to prevent a catastrophic explosion. But they pressed on, because that's what humans did. They endured, they adapted, they refused to quit when quitting would have been the rational choice. As they emerged from the corridor into a pocket of stable space, Navigator Vias announced what they all hoped to hear. "Clear space ahead, Captain. We're through the worst of it." Behind them, the Maelstrom continued its eternal dance of destruction, but ahead lay open stars and the distant glow of the outer colonies. They had done the impossible. The 44 surviving ships of the human fleet limped into the Aurora system 18 hours ahead of schedule, their hulls scarred and their crews exhausted but triumphant. What they found there would reshape the balance of power in the galaxy forever. The Aurora system wasn't empty. "Detecting multiple energy signatures," reported sensor specialist Zara Keening, her fingers dancing across her console. 47 vessels unknown configuration holding position around Aurora Prime. On the main screen, sleek ships unlike anything in the galactic databases hung in perfect formation. Their hulls gleamed with an opalescent sheen that seemed to shift between colors, and energy patterns flickered along their surfaces like captured lightning. "They're hailing us," Communications Officer Brennan announced, his voice tight with nervous energy. The view screen flickered, revealing a being that defied easy description. Tall and ethereal, with features that seemed to flow between states of matter, it possessed eyes that held the depth of ancient starlight. When it spoke, Its voice carried harmonics that resonated in their bones. "I am Arctos Neth Calamar, speaker for the Viridian Collective," the being announced. "We have observed your passage through the maelstrom with considerable interest." Riven stepped forward, her diplomatic training warring with exhaustion. "I'm Commander Riven Caste of the Human Colonial Defense Force. We're fleeing the hegemony advance and seeking sanctuary for our people." "Sanctuary," Arctos repeated, the word seeming to amuse him. "You speak of fleeing, yet you have accomplished something no species has managed in 700 standard years. The maelstrom has been considered impassable since the Great Silence. Even we Viridians, with our mastery of dimensional folding, deemed it too dangerous to attempt." A murmur ran through the bridge crew. The Viridians were myths, legends spoken of in whispered tales, an ancient race that had supposedly transcended physical reality itself, becoming beings of pure energy who could reshape matter with thought alone. "Yet here you stand," Arctos continued, "your primitive vessels held together by determination and salvaged metal, having threaded the needle through cosmic chaos itself. Tell me, Commander Kast, how did you accomplish this feat?" Riven found herself smiling despite their desperate situation. "We didn't think about it too hard. When something's impossible, sometimes the trick is not knowing it." The Viridian's form shimmered with what might have been laughter. "Fascinating. Your species continues to surprise us. We have been watching the hegemony's expansion with growing concern. Their crystalline perfection leaves no room for the beautiful chaos that drives evolution and growth." "Are you saying you'll help us?" Riven asked, hardly daring to hope. "Help? You?" Arctos's eyes blazed brighter. "Commander, we are offering you something far more valuable than sanctuary. We are offering you alliance." The bridge fell silent except for the hum of overtaxed life support systems. An alliance with the Viridians, a species so advanced they existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, would change everything. "The hegemony believes themselves the pinnacle of order and efficiency," Arctos explained. "They have conquered through superior technology and tactical precision, but they have never faced an enemy that refuses to accept defeat, that turns impossibility into opportunity." Chief Science Officer Hendricks leaned forward. "What exactly are you proposing? Your species has proven something we had begun to doubt, that spirit can triumph over physics, that will can overcome seemingly insurmountable odds. The Viridians have grown stagnant in our perfection. You have reminded us of the value of struggle, of the beauty in refusing to surrender." Arctos gestured, and holographic displays materialized around the bridge, showing star charts and tactical analyses. "We will provide you with technological enhancements, not to replace your ships, but to augment them. Your vessels have already proven their worth by surviving the maelstrom. Now we will help them fight." As the implications sank in, Riven felt something she hadn't experienced in months: genuine hope, not just for survival but for victory. "There is one condition," Arctos added. "You must continue to be yourselves. Do not lose the qualities that brought you through the maelstrom. The galaxy needs its wild cards, its impossible dreamers." Riven extended her hand, an ancient human gesture of agreement. "Deal," she said. The hegemony fleet emerged from hyperspace expecting to find defenseless colonies ripe for harvest. Instead, they discovered something that would haunt their collective crystalline consciousness for generations to come. Fleet Prime Kethmore Nalos materialized on the command deck of the flagship Inevitable Harmony, his crystalline form resonating with confident frequencies. Through the vast transparent dome that served as his vessel's view screen, he observed the Aurora system with the cold satisfaction of absolute certainty. "Scan reveals 44 primitive vessels," reported his tactical subordinate, Velkai Theros. "Human configuration, significant battle damage. They appear to have somehow bypassed our interdiction fields." Kethmore Nalos's form pulsed with amusement, a cascade of blue-white light rippling through his translucent body. Impossible. The only route to this system passes through the maelstrom. Even our own ships cannot navigate those chaotic fields. Nevertheless, Fleet Prime. They are present. The hegemony commander studied the tactical display with growing interest. Humans, the galaxy's most stubborn infestation, a species that refused to acknowledge the natural order of submission to their betters. Every other race had either joined the hegemony willingly or been efficiently conquered. Only humanity continued to resist, clinging to primitive concepts like freedom and independence. "Signal the human vessels," Keth Mornalis commanded. "Offer them the standard terms of surrender. Perhaps their impossible journey has finally taught them wisdom." The response came not from the human fleet, but from somewhere else entirely. Energy signatures, unlike anything in hegemony databases, materialized around Aurora Prime, sleek vessels that seemed to exist partially outside normal space-time. "Unknown ships decloaking," Velkai Theros reported, his harmonic voice rising in pitch with what might have been concern. "Energy patterns. Fleet Prime. These match theoretical profiles for Viridian technology." For the first time in 3 centuries, Keth Mornalis experienced something approaching uncertainty. The Viridians were supposed to be extinct, or ascended, or otherwise removed from galactic affairs. Their sudden appearance alongside the human fleet suggested possibilities he had not calculated. "This is Commander Riven Costa of the Human Colonial Defense Force," came the transmission from the lead human vessel. "I'm speaking for the Aurora System Defense Coalition. You have 30 seconds to withdraw from our space before we demonstrate why the maelstrom couldn't stop us." Keth Mornalos's form flashed with indignant crimson. "Coalition? These primitives dare—" His words died as the human ships began to move. But they weren't behaving like human ships anymore. Their movements flowed with impossible grace, dancing between dimensions as Viridian technology merged with human determination. The scarred hulls of the colonial vessels now gleamed with energy patterns that hurt to observe directly. "Fleet Prime." Velkai Theros' voice carried undertones of what might have been fear. "The humans are generating gravitational distortions similar to those within the maelstrom itself. They're weaponizing chaos fields." Impossible. The hegemony's tactical doctrines were based on order, precision, and overwhelming technological superiority. But these humans weren't following any known patterns. They moved like storm fronts, unpredictable and wild. The first wave of human ships slammed into the hegemony's outer perimeter with devastating effect. Not through superior firepower, their weapons were still primitive by crystalline standards, but through sheer unpredictability. They fought like the maelstrom itself had taught them, embracing chaos instead of fearing it. The destroyer Fierce, her hull still bearing scars from the nebula passage, materialized inside the shield envelope of a hegemony cruiser and opened fire at point-blank range. The cruiser's perfect crystalline structure shattered like glass, unable to compensate for an attack that violated every tactical assumption. "All ships, execute Maelstrom Protocol," Riven's voice carried across the quantum channels. "Fight like the storm!" What followed wasn't a battle in any conventional sense. It was controlled chaos, with human ships flickering in and out of dimensional folds, while Viridian vessels provided devastating support fire. The hegemony fleet, for all its technological superiority, found itself fighting an enemy that refused to be predicted or contained. Captain Naya Volkov's retribution carved through the enemy formation like a hurricane given purpose. Her crew, laughing with the kind of manic joy that comes from doing the impossible twice in 1 week. The transport Liberty Bell, supposedly a non-combatant, used her cargo bays to deploy swarms of improvised mining drones that swarmed hegemony ships like mechanical locusts. As his perfect fleet crumbled around him, Keth Mornalis finally understood what the galaxy had failed to grasp about humanity. They didn't just refuse to quit, They turned impossibility into advantage, chaos into opportunity. The hegemony was learning a lesson that would reshape galactic civilization. Sometimes the greatest strength isn't in perfection, but in the stubborn refusal to accept defeat. The news of humanity's impossible victory at Aurora spread through the galaxy like wildfire through dry timber. What had begun as a desperate escape through the maelstrom had become something unprecedented, the first decisive defeat of the hegemony in over 3 centuries. In the crystal spires of Nexus Ka-Vel, the hegemony's capital world, Fleet Admiral Zokthel Magros convened an emergency session of the Strategic Collective. His towering crystalline form resonated with frequencies of deep concern as holographic displays showed the tactical aftermath of Aurora. "Explain to me," his voice carried, harmonics of barely controlled fury, how 44 primitive vessels destroyed a full battle group. Science Prime Kelnor Vethis, her crystal structure flickering with nervous energy, projected the battle analysis into the chamber's center. "The humans have somehow merged their technology with Viridian dimensional manipulation capabilities. More disturbing, they're not following any predictable tactical doctrine. Elaborate. Fleet Prime, human warfare appears to be based on improvisation. They adapt their strategies in real time based on emotional responses and intuitive leaps that our battle computers cannot model. When faced with superior firepower, they don't calculate optimal retreat vectors. They attack more aggressively." The assembled crystalline beings resonated with confusion. Such behavior violated every principle of rational conflict resolution. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the Aurora victory was having effects the hegemony hadn't anticipated. On the industrial world of Kef Sigma 9, the conquered Dralthic workforce heard whispers of the impossible human fleet and began to remember what defiance felt like. Subtle acts of sabotage increased by 300%. In the Trader Confederacy, merchant guilds that had submitted to hegemony protection started holding secret meetings. If humans could defeat the crystalline fleets, perhaps other options existed beyond submission or destruction. The ripple effects reached even the remnant territories, where the galaxy's oldest surviving species had retreated to avoid hegemony expansion. Elder Sage Myths of Ending, whose people had witnessed the rise and fall of 17 galactic civilizations, spoke words that would be recorded in the archives of deep time. Perhaps we have forgotten the value of beautiful impossibility. These humans, they sing songs that chaos itself dances to. Back at Aurora, the human fleet was undergoing its own transformation. Viridian technology wasn't simply being grafted onto their ships. It was evolving, adapting to human creativity in ways that fascinated even Arctos Neth Calamar. "Your species has a remarkable ability to take our precise instruments and turn them into artistic expressions," the Viridian observed as he watched Chief Engineer Mortimer modify a dimensional flux generator with what appeared to be spare parts from a coffee machine. "Art's just engineering with style," Cass replied, making adjustments that no Viridian would have considered possible. "And sometimes style beats perfection." The modifications were spreading throughout the fleet as human crews shared innovations with each other. The destroyer Valiant had figured out how to use gravitational distortions as a form of faster-than-light communication. The cruiser Storm's Eye had weaponized her waste recycling system, turning it into a dimensional torpedo launcher. Most remarkably, the crews themselves were changing. Months of running from seemingly inevitable defeat had been replaced by something the galaxy hadn't seen in centuries, a species that believed it could win against impossible odds. "Captain," Navigator Vias reported, his cybernetic eye analyzing data streams from across local space, "we're detecting movement in 17 systems, ships breaking away from hegemony formations heading for neutral space." Riven nodded grimly. "The revolution is spreading." "Orders, Commander?" asked Captain Volkov, her face appearing on the tactical screen along with the other ship commanders. Riven looked out at the stars, knowing that somewhere among them, The hegemony was mobilizing everything they had for one final push. But for the first time since the war began, she felt something she'd almost forgotten: confidence. "We've shown the galaxy that the impossible is just another word for not yet," she announced to her fleet. "Now let's teach them what happens when humans don't quit." The human fleet began to move, their scarred hulls gleaming with impossible technologies, heading toward a confrontation that would determine the fate of free will in the galaxy. The final battle came not as the hegemony planned, a calculated assault on isolated human worlds, but as humanity chose, a direct strike at the crystal heart of their empire itself. Nexus KVL hung in space like a geometric fever dream, its crystalline structures forming perfect mathematical relationships that pleased the hegemony's aesthetic sensibilities. It was supposed to be impregnable, surrounded by 7 defensive shells and protected by the largest fleet in galactic history. The human coalition arrived through impossible angles. "Dimensional fold complete," reported Navigator Vias, his voice tight with concentration. "We're inside their outer perimeter. Where the hegemony expected a frontal assault by primitive warships, they instead faced something unprecedented: 44 vessels that had learned to fight like living storms, supported by Viridian technology and driven by the kind of desperate hope that makes the impossible merely improbable. The USS Defiant materialized directly above the capital's northern pole, while the Retribution emerged from dimensional space inside the city's atmospheric envelope. Across the system, human ships appeared in locations that violated every principle of tactical deployment, and that was exactly the point. Fleet Admiral Zokthel Magros watched his perfect defenses crumble with something approaching philosophical horror. "How are they inside our shields?" he demanded. "They're not attacking the shields, Fleet Admiral," Science Prime Kelnor Vethis reported, her crystal form flickering with patterns of disbelief. "They're ignoring them entirely. Their dimensional technology allows them to simply step around our defenses." But it wasn't just the technology that made the difference. As human ships engaged the hegemony fleet in the space around Nexus Cavell, their tactics defied every computer model. They fought with the kind of wild creativity that had once carried their species from cave paintings to starships in a few thousand years. Captain Meridian's Phoenix, rebuilt from the wreckage of 3 different ships, used her mining lasers to carve abstract sculptures in the hulls of hegemony cruisers, patterns that somehow disrupted their crystalline matrices. The Transport New Horizon deployed a swarm of maintenance drones programmed with nothing but human curse words and an imperative to attach themselves to enemy sensors. But the true shock came when the hegemony's perfect battle computers tried to predict human responses and failed completely. Where logic suggested retreat, humans attacked. Where tactical doctrine demanded coordination, they improvised. Where mathematics indicated impossible odds, they simply shrugged and pressed forward. "This is Commander Case to all hegemony forces," Riven's voice cut through the combat chatter. "You've spent centuries conquering the galaxy through superior technology and overwhelming force. You've made one critical error. You assumed that would be enough." The human fleet pressed their attack, no longer the desperate refugees who had fled through the maelstrom months ago. They had become something new, a synthesis of human determination and Viridian wisdom, of chaos and purpose, of the impossible made manifest. As crystalline ships shattered around the capital world, something unprecedented happened. The conquered species throughout the hegemony began to rise. The Dralthic shipyards went silent as workers sabotaged production lines. The Kefrian mining colonies declared independence. Even some crystalline beings began to question the perfection of their eternal order. In his command chamber, Fleet Admiral Zokthel Magros faced a choice no hegemony leader had ever contemplated: surrender or watch his civilization tear itself apart trying to stop an enemy that refused to be contained by logic. "Fleet Admiral," came the transmission from Commander Case. This can end one of two ways. You can continue throwing ships at us until there's nothing left of either side, or you can accept that the galaxy has room for more than one way of being. The crystalline admiral's form pulsed with frequencies of deep contemplation. Around him, the war that had defined galactic civilization for centuries was ending not in conquest, but in transformation. "What are your terms?" he asked. "No terms," Riven replied. "Just a choice. Keep trying to force the galaxy into your perfect patterns, or accept that chaos and order can coexist, that freedom and structure can find balance." As the human fleet held position above the crystal capital, something miraculous occurred. Across the galaxy, species that had forgotten how to dream of freedom began to remember. The hegemony's empire didn't collapse. It evolved, becoming something that had room for both crystal precision and human impossibility. Years later, when historians tried to explain how 44 damaged ships had changed the course of galactic civilization, they would struggle with concepts that didn't fit into neat categories. How do you quantify stubbornness? How do you measure the power of refusing to quit? But Commander Riven Kaoste, now Admiral of the Galactic Free Fleet, would always remember the truth. Sometimes the most important victories aren't won through superior firepower or perfect tactics. Sometimes they're won by looking at the impossible and saying, "Not today." The maelstrom still swirls in the depths of space, chaotic and beautiful and deadly, but now it's guarded by human ships whose crews understand something the galaxy had almost forgotten. The impossible is just another word for not yet attempted. And in the spiral arms where free species build new civilizations alongside reformed hegemony worlds, children of a dozen races learn the human motto that changed everything. We don't quit. We go ahead and risk those wild trips. Some lessons, once learned, burn forever among the stars.